Good evening and welcome to the Ombudsman program. My name is Diane Welborn. I am the Ombudsman and I will be your host for this evening's program. We have a very exciting lineup tonight to talk to our viewers about the topic of sustainable agriculture. I met these individuals recently at a food summit and it was so diverse and so interesting. I wanted to bring them to our viewing audience, so I'm glad you all could join me tonight. Let me introduce first, please, Suzanne Mills-Wasniak, the State Coordinator of Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education with Ohio State University. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Diane.
Your title is a lot.
Yes, it's a big mouthful.
That's why you call it SARE for short.
That's correct.
Right? Good, good. And we are also pleased to have with us Dr. Felix Fernando, a coordinator of sustainability graduate work at the Hanley Sustainability Institute at the University of Dayton. So thank you very much for coming tonight.
Thanks,
so glad to have you here.
Pleasure to be here.
Good. I'd like to start off with an overview of the activities of the SARE, which you coordinate together, along with some others on your team, I'm
Correct.
sure. So why don't you tell our viewers about how long you've been in operation and what topics you cover, and so they can get to know you.
Okay, well, first of all, I am the Ohio State Extension Educator in Montgomery County for Ag and Natural Resources, and as part of my job duties, I am the State SARE Co-Coordinator for Ohio SARE. SARE is a USDA government program that was founded in 1988. We celebrated our 30th anniversary approximately, well, a year ago in April. We actually are unique among the USDA programs as we focus on ranchers and farmers. We focus on their profitability and quality of life while reducing our environmental impacts to the land. Farmers and ranchers make up our constituency. They actually govern where some of the programs are funded. We are a grant-funded program. We fund a lot of grants throughout the 4 regions of the United States, and Ohio is in the north central region. It's a 12-state region, and the farmers and ranchers guide our work, and we will fund them to see if they can increase the profitability of their land or something that will help the overall farming community.
Wonderful. And how do they participate in guiding your work?
We have advisory committees that they sit on. We have grant committees that review the grants. We have in the north central regions 4 different types of grants, and they sit on all the committees. In fact, they make up the majority of the committees deciding what grant project that is submitted actually will be funded and how they want the grant terms to look like. The research and education grant is a $200,000 grant that is offered. Usually we will have roughly 150 grant applications in the north central region. It'll be whittled down to approximately 20. We'll fund 12 of them, and with the farmers on the committee, they are actually harder reviewers than the academics that sit on the committee.
Interesting.
So Ohio has had roughly 219 grants since SARE's inception in 1988, and we've had approximately $6.1 million come into Ohio farmers to do research on different topics, and all that research is published and available to the public.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's good to know. Felix, I'd like to let you tell the viewers about the Hanley Institute, where you research, work, and teach.
Well, I like to start first with University of Dayton.
Okay.
And I like to start with 3 things. I mean, first is that University of Dayton is ranked among the top 2% of sustainability from ASHE. So ASHE stars rated schools, and ASHE stands for Association for Advancement of Sustainability in Higher Education. And so UD is the first school in Ohio. And UD also made the top 20 in the cool schools list by the Sierra magazine. And UD also recently signed the Second Nature's Resilience Commitment. So I think these three things demonstrate the commitment of UD as the university for the common good, the commitment for sustainability, the commitment for human rights, all these issues that are interconnected and pretty much within that main focus at the University of Dayton. Now, in terms of the Hanley Sustainability Institute, the institute was established in 2014 through a gift from George and Amanda Hanley, and without them, none of the things that we do now through the Hanley Sustainability Institute would be possible. So in terms of the things we do at the Hanley Sustainability Institute, I would say our mission falls into 4 different areas. Firstly, sustainability education. So we have a BS and a BA in sustainability. There's 2 tracks under each degree. So under the BS in sustainability, we have an energy and a water track. So students can specialize in those areas. And under the BA, we have a food and an urban sustainability track. So that's our major degree program. We also have a minor in sustainability, energy and the environment, which has been there since 2006. And it's one of the most popular minors on campus. And we also have a graduate certificate in sustainability. So that's largely the sustainability education of the Sustainability Studies program under the Hanley Sustainability Institute. And then the second area is research. And this is largely where the Hanley Sustainability Institute tries to create a network of sustainability scholars working with the universities, other departments, and all the awesome scholars and researchers in other departments, trying to bring them together to create a network of sustainability scholars. So that's the second area. The third area is on-campus sustainability, from whether it's working with facilities management, the Rivers Institute, the Fitz Center. So this is all about creating sustainability-related projects and initiatives on campus. So we have a solar prairie, we have a green roof, recycling, energy efficiency in student housing, having local food in our dining services. So all of those initiatives, the Hanley Sustainability Institute provides strategic leadership and direction and coordination for these initiatives. The fourth area is, and this is where I play a lot of, my role is on community sustainability. So as a facilitator, the Hanley Sustainability Institute works with other community stakeholders like the City of Dayton, different departments within the City of Dayton, the Dayton Regional Green, the Montgomery County, the Public Health Department in terms of food equity and food access. So this is where we work with a lot of the other community organizations and partners to nurture and support their sustainability initiatives. So I would say those 4 areas in terms of sustainability education, research, on-campus sustainability, and community sustainability. That basically sets up our core focus areas.
Well, thank you for that wonderful overview, and it gives us even more reasons to be proud and thankful for UD in our community, because there's obviously a lot going on there. You touched on one project I'd like to ask you to talk a little bit more about, and that is maybe the local food in the cafeterias and how that works on the campus at UD.
Well, it's kind of a unique project, and we're just at the very threshold of getting it started. Okay. We have met with several of our local farmers. They have the capability to produce the food that's needed. We just have to get some barriers down with respect to produce safety. Some of the safety aspects, especially in produce, would be a major safety aspect, but also in the meat department. How do we supply them when they need it, and how do we gear up? Because as a farmer, we cannot gear up that quickly. But a major stumbling block is the fact that the economics have to be there for our farmers to be able to supply that, what we would call a niche market. They have to be able to make money doing that.
Okay.
Felix, what would you?
I would say this project, like Suzanne said, just getting started, at the same time would be helpful to establish a model where local farmers could collaborate and scale up together to cater to institutional markets. So we are very appreciative for UD Dining Services in providing us that opportunity to kind of study how this mechanism and collaboration would work and to identify the challenges that needs to be addressed. But UD Dining Services is really interested in increasing the share of local produce and locally produced food, and that's a great opportunity for our farmers and for us as part of the Montgomery County Food Equity Coalition Vibrant Farms group to establish those networks and the challenges that need to be addressed in order to make that happen.
One of the things that we're actually looking at, and the stool that we brought, because to get to sustainability, regardless of what we do, we have to have 3 pillars of it. And the one being economic viability. The farmers have to be able to make money to produce the food that we eat. It needs to be environmentally friendly, so we have a low impact on our growing area and the earth and on the environment we have. It also has to be socially acceptable and responsible. We could not survive without our customers, and our customers are the consumers of the products we produce. And as you look, as we have 3 circles, we have a stool that is kind of a symbol of what sustainable ag looks like, and we have the circle for environmental viability, or economic viability, environmental sustainability, and socially acceptable. And where these circles meet is actually sustainable. That's something that we can live with, and our farmers can live with, and our consumers and the environment live with.
Well, it's a wonderful first step that the dining services at UD are interested in starting this discussion, because of course there are always barriers to overcome, but you have to have a willingness to start somewhere to overcome those barriers. What would you say about, tell our viewers how you two got together, from you at Ohio Extension Service and you on the campus of UD. How did you two join forces here?
I'll let Suzanne.
Yeah, why do I? Well, Felix asked.
She has been doing this for a long time.
Very good.
Well,
me.
Very good.
We also, UD essentially 2 years ago came to Ohio State and asked us if we could actually help them with a project that they had. And so we've agreed to help them. Our job is to make green things come up out of the ground and make everything sustainable and provide food. And so Felix and I kind of got together at that project, and I guess kind of the rest is history. I'll let you go along with, we're co-chairs of Vibrant Farms for the Food Equity Coalition. We're working on some of that.
I think growing up in a farming community, when I moved to Dayton, I was looking at initiatives around local food and sustainability to get involved with, and it made a natural sense to work with Suzanne. So I started going into meetings and different community meetings, and then that's where we met, and then
it
just
happened from
yeah,
there.
exactly.
Your interests were mutual.
Very natural.
I'm
yeah.
being told that we have a caller that would like to ask a question. So, okay, thank you for calling the program. We'd love to hear your question. You're on the air.
Thank you so much. This has already been a very inspiring and informative program. Thank you. I'm especially impressed with the values that undergird the work that's going on, the democratic character in which farmers make decisions on the committee about grants, and the fact that the program at UD is oriented toward the common good through education, research, student involvement, and community partners. Now, my question has to do with the economics of all this and the role of, I guess I would say, middle persons between the farmers and the consumers, that is to say, suppliers. So I know young people who would like to be involved in bringing to market things that are grown and raised sustainably. What is your outreach to cultivate these young people who want to be the mediator to make the economics of all this work out?
Thank you very much for your excellent question. Thank you for calling in. Well, I don't know which one of you wants to go first, but
You go, because and then I'll talk from the farmer's perspective.
Okay, so a lot of my background is related to planning, sustainability planning. So I would say entrepreneurship and that economic system, building up the capacity for that system, especially around local food, is a major part of connecting the demand to the supply. Now, a lot of the time we would talk about this aggregation as a food hub, but there are different variations of this emerging. Now, I would say a lot of the time, especially in an urban context, the farmers are smaller. We get a mix of farmers from commodity producers to small, sustainable organic farmers, and everybody needs to have an opportunity to play a role in the local food system, and it's the aggregation or the entrepreneurship's role to basically bring all these different variety of farmers and producers together so that they can cater to the different market segments that are there. So if you think about in terms of different market segments, like you would have like institutions like UD or hospitals or local schools, but you would also have these neighborhoods that are considered as food deserts, have really low access to food. These young people with entrepreneurial skills, and we are seeing this model emerge in some other cities, and it is starting in Dayton too, have a significant role that they could play in entrepreneurship in terms of creating these supply chains that connect these local producers to markets. Especially, I'm using the example of neighborhoods as considered as food deserts because these are neighborhoods that don't have access to or availability of fresh produce, and farmers have the capacity to produce that. But it's a challenge getting it from the farmers to these neighborhoods, and creating that link and that opportunity is a major challenge and a barrier that could be addressed through these entrepreneurial efforts.
okay.
It's the transportation issue that is a major component of this. How do we get the product from its source to the final consumer? Because there is a middleman there. We are working as Ohio SARE, and North Central SARE has an initiative that just started this year working with beginning farmers to help them get the skills they need to be more proactive in getting some of these markets, maybe looking at some diversification. How do they interact with their customers? Because a lot of times we are seen as just being out on the farm, and as I've said before, we are equally as comfortable as a farmer out in our fields as we are in a boardroom or in front of a TV camera. We have to tell our story, and we have to work with our other partners.
Right, excellent. So you mentioned that some other cities are providing some models for some of this. Would you like to give our viewers just a couple of examples about how that gap between producers and food deserts is being bridged?
So a lot of the time, that's where the aggregation, the role of transportation and aggregation comes into play. Now, there are some cities that have established a physical model for that aggregation and transportation. So you would have a physical location where all the produce gets aggregated, processed to some level, and then gets distributed to the neighborhoods or the consumers go into these locations. Now that's one model where you would have a physical aggregation food hub type of model, but you also have what is emerging, a virtual food hub type of situation. Now this would be a situation where transportation or an aggregation mechanism on the back end works with the farmers to accumulate and process the produce, but on the front end it's virtual, it's online. So consumers with the convenience of their phones or computers can place orders and so on, and then the back end, the transportation, will pick up certain locations as just drop points so that the consumers can, it could be neighborhood level, where the consumers can go to these locations and just pick up their order. So it's an alternative model to where you need to go to the grocery store, where the produce actually comes to those neighborhoods. In certain identified locations. So there's a lot of the added convenience, the freshness, and the flexibility in terms of those models.
Okay. Go ahead, please.
And a lot of the models are also, farmers are forming cooperatives where they work together and they can supply a bigger venue, or they can grow different crops to do that. Kansas City has a good model. Detroit has a model that's working, but Dayton has to have its own model. It can, we can replicate, but we can't totally replicate because we've got different farmers. And different consumers.
I can very well understand that you can't just pick up one model and plop it down. But in these designs, is it feasible for a community center or maybe even a church to serve as a drop point in a neighborhood? Because most of our food desert neighborhoods do have some of these kinds of institutions, or even a school. Are these even possible?
I think this is where the importance or the significance of community organization in these models come into play. Yes, these organizations like churches or community centers or schools can play a role as these drop points, but at the same time, there's a lot of work that needs to be done around organizing the community to recognize this as a viable option available to them for accessing fresh and local produce. So there's in these models, compared to conventional like the grocery store model, there's a lot of community engagement and community organizing that needs to be done in order to make that model work.
And it also has to be done on the farmer level to engage the farmers, because a lot of our farmers, if they're already established, have markets they're ready to go to, they know what their income's going to be, what they have to produce. We're now asking them to come out and look at a different model, look at some diversification. Now may be the time for them to do that. But again, it comes back to the individual and how do we organize a group of farmers, because not any of our farmers can supply the needs of Dayton as one viable farm.
Yeah,
it's going to have to be a group effort.
Yeah, and again, so in terms of community organization on the front end, on the consumer side, on the back end, it's the organization of the farmers and the capacity building on the production side. So a lot of these models require both of those things to be coordinated simultaneously, so that up and coming new farmers have the ability to get established and provide or become assimilated into that network, and at the same time the neighborhoods have the organization around so that they can establish as organized around those buying points. So both of the things, on the demand side and the supply side, have to have innovative, a different organization dynamic compared to the contemporary model of establishing a grocery store in a neighborhood, and that solves the food security or food availability issue. These models are really different and innovative in that sense.
And it would be a very large education job, as I think you all both said, to educate the community to this new possibility and a new way of doing this. So, and of transfer payments and all that kind of stuff directly through. Well, what division of your many farmers groups are looking at this part yet? Are we there? Or are we talking about it?
Both ways.
Okay.
Both ways. We have farmers who are ready to jump headfirst into it. We also have farmers who are sitting back thinking, I want to see somebody else do this first. We have the model to organize But again, if you remember, farmers are notoriously independent. They want to see, and realistically, they're going to be looking at their bottom line. They can't stay in business. We can't be the lowest cost seller in this type of model. We have to have a fair price for what we are producing. So there's a lot of new farmers who really want to do this. Again, it comes back to some of the issues of land access, capitalization of the enterprise, none of which are cheap right now. Ohio's talking about some things, just like other states, to incentivize beginning farmers, older farmers. The generation now is average age is very close to 60 years old. They're hitting retirement age. Roughly 37% of the land in Ohio that is rented is owned by a woman who has either inherited it from her husband or her parents. We have a little bit different attitude about our land and what we want done, what we want to see done with it, but we also have this other entity going on that we have an investment, it has to come back and pay us something for it. So there's this balancing act that's all going on right now, and a lot of land's going to transfer within the next 10 to 15 years. Is it going to go to the smaller farmers in the area? Yeah, because we have roughly 781 farms in Montgomery County.
Yes.
Over half of them are under 50%. Under 50 acres. So they're small farms. This would be a viable operation for them if everything worked out.
Oh, I've been told we have another call to the program. Hello, caller. Thank you for calling in. We'd love to hear your question. You're on the air.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for taking my call. I watch this show almost every month, and I've got to admit that this whole idea of sustainable agriculture is very unfamiliar to me. So I'd like to hear more from the guests there about the role of the consumer and why is it, how does this affect the average person who currently shops at the store, and why should we be concerned, I know that may sound stupid, but be concerned about sustainable agriculture, and why is it so important that we know about this? Does that make sense?
It does. It's not stupid, and thank you for watching and for calling in. We appreciate your question, and we'll get an answer for you. You can start anywhere you want with that.
I would like to answer that question in a way that where we look at local foods compared to the conventional food system we have right now. When you think about the two and why you should care, or why we should care about this, and I think it goes into the centrality of looking at food in a more holistic way. Where is our food grown? Where does it come from? How long does it travel to get to the grocery store where we go and buy it from? How long has that time period been in terms of it being harvested from the farm up until it ends up on our grocery bag? And then what are the different impacts associated with that whole process? Now, the reality is a lot of our urban environments we haven't thought about our urban environments as conducive for food production. So a lot of our cities are really dependent on food coming from outside and sometimes from really far away locations. And we know, especially within now this is a bigger topic to talk about, but I want to frame it in that way. We know within the context of climate change, food production could be one of the biggest areas that could be seriously impacted, especially because of extreme weather events as we've seen in the Midwest during spring. So if climate change has a negative extreme weather events and climate change have a negative impact on where food is being produced right now, then these communities, especially cities and urban areas that are dependent on food coming in from these areas will face some serious challenges. Now, compared to that model, local foods are basically, very in close proximity, grown, and so these systems are much more dependent, I would say, within the context of climate change. So for urban areas, in terms of food dependency, or we talked about energy independence, or we talked about energy becoming energy independent. I think local foods and the food system we have right now have the same connotation. Our food systems right now are really dependent on certain locations, which are sometimes in faraway countries right now, and local food provides us an opportunity to be more independent in terms of where we get the food from, how nutritious that food is, how the time it takes for the food to be harvested from the farmer, and then for it to end up in our grocery bag. So it requires a slightly different type of mental model where you look at not just the price, but you look at more holistically about where what you eat comes from, and things like that. Yeah.
And I'd like to add that the consumer actually drives a lot of our market production systems on the farm. How do we raise the livestock? Is it in a confinement unit? Is it in a free-range system? All of those production areas are driven by the consumer. Your voice is definitely heard by the farmer the same way as the local food system. Local farmers are driven by what they produce, but they are also hamstrung by the fact that we have a climate that cannot grow 365 days a year unless we are actually putting in some energy inputs to do it. So it's kind of a two-way street. The customer has to be giving feedback to the farmer and to the growers. And we also have to be looking at the other models that are there.
With local food systems, that because of the proximity and the more opportunities for connection, the connection between the producer and the consumer is much more possible than, say, a tomato coming from some other country. You actually can build a relationship with the person who is producing the food for you.
Yeah, wonderful. We have another caller. So I'm going to turn now to invite our caller to ask your question. You're on the air.
Good evening. Yes. I worked with an organization in northern Ohio called the New Agrarian Center, or Got the Knack. And they helped to organize a network of mostly Amish farms, actually, in northern Ohio, within a 100-mile radius to help service the Cleveland area. And I think eventually they developed a CSA that reached over 600 families each week, all out of that network of mostly Amish, but also organic farmers. I was wondering if there was a similar way to connect farmers to and help with distribution to help bring in more sustainable agriculture, both connecting farmers and families to one sort of more central resource. Thanks for your time and for all the info tonight.
Thank you for your call. We appreciate your viewership and your question. I'll let you all take that.
The model's out there. We're working on it. Again, it's going to take time. The Amish handle things a little bit differently than some of the farmers in our area. We are starting to get some Amish farmers in our area. But again, it comes back to farmer and farmer to consumer relationships that need to be built in this area.
I think the good thing is we don't have to reinvent the wheel. There are lots of models, and we aren't trying to. We are looking at other models that we can use as best practices to be translated into the region. So the good thing is there are lots of models that we can look at and say, well, this one sounds translatable. So it's a really great resources to have to look at other models and then identify the different dynamics that we could translate into the context of food production in the Dayton region and also consumption in the Dayton region. I mean, what he was talking about basically represents that transportation and aggregation.
That co-op,
yeah,
so that co-op model.
That is providing the food moving from where it is produced to where people can purchase it.
Correct, and one of the things that those models do is those individual farmers are also receive training in produce safety and livestock handling that essentially helps. It's not 100% risk-free, nothing is, but it helps lower the risk to the consumer on that product because they're all on the same page. They've all either been through good agricultural practices or they've been through produce safety training. So again, it's an organization similar to a co-op, but it's a group of people coming together, and that takes time to build. And what model do we need? The farmers are going to tell us that.
Yeah. And at the same time, we must recognize that farmers are already busy.
Yes.
They have a lot of things to take care of in the farm, so this can't be another burden on them. We have to recognize, even as a city, we have several neighborhoods that are recognized as food deserts, so there's definitely a clear need, and so if this becomes a complete burden on farmers, then it might not reach its potential, or it might not succeed as the representative of the capacity that farmers have. So this is why it requires a support and direction through policy and through other resources to make this happen. Because if this falls on the farmers, they're already busy.
Yes.
So, yeah.
We have another call, and then we'll come back to this point. Yes, thank you very much for calling into the program. You're on the air.
Thank you. Thank you so very much for taking my call. I was listening earlier, you talk about the food deserts, and that was one of my questions I wanted to ask about, your relationship with many of our communities have lost major groceries, and so it's just adding to what seems to be an ongoing problem. In all that you're doing with your partnership and programming to help build our agriculture and growing in our communities, how are our community members or consumers being educated? Are there classes or resources that people can help better understand? I remember earlier there was a comment about the farmers market, and obviously they need to make money, but if people don't take advantage of the market because they may not know how to prepare food or don't like, produce, or so. Are there any kinds of classes or resources out there that will help educate consumers so they will participate and be, buy into what you're doing here?
Thank you very much for that excellent question. We appreciate it. I'll let you all take it from there. I'm sure you've got lots of resources.
Well, one of the things that we do have as extension in Ohio and all around the United States is we have a resource in the Farm Bill called SNAP, Supplemental Nutrition Education. We have that program at Montgomery County. We have, that's not my area, I think we have 4 program assistants who go out and teach classes throughout the county. We also have the expanded food and nutrition education program in the county. I think there are again 4 program assistants in Montgomery County that teach nutrition classes for both youth, adults, and families with children. So there are some resources out there. We also have other community partners that teach cooking classes, how to buy food, etc. Again, it comes back to some of the clientele we serve may not have anything but a crock pot that they move with. They may not have the ability to have the equipment to cook. They may not have the pots and pans that they need if they're moving constantly. That's been a major barrier that we have found, that we can teach so much, but if you don't have the equipment available to you, how good is it going to be? And may not have refrigeration either.
Yeah.
Right, that's a big challenge. Let me ask, these classes that you were referring to, would one of our viewers find them at Ohio State Extension website?
They would find them on our website. They could also call our office and talk to Nancy Lyons is in our office. She is the head of the EPNEP program in Montgomery, Greene, and Clark counties. She can schedule classes. Again, it's a series of classes, because research has proven you can only, if you do the class once, you don't have a lot of retention, and it's a series that builds. So that's part of the model. These are free classes. They're paid for out of the farm bill, which is also a nutrition bill that is coming, that it was just voted in. So there are resources out there from Extension, also from other community partners that teach. I think Mission of Mary has some.
So I think this would be a good opportunity to introduce the viewers to the Montgomery County Food Equity Coalition. Because, I mean, we co-chair the Vibrant Farms, but there are several other teams. We have a Healthy People team, we have a Thriving Local Economy team, we have a Sustainable Ecosystems team. So this is joint effort. And a lot of these other teams, I mean, we focus on the farmers and the production side and connecting farmers to the consumers, but a lot of the other teams really focus on some of these other challenges, like how to teach people on how to eat healthy, healthy cooking. So we have a lot of community partners working with those organizations, those teams, like Mission of Mary in East End, even East End Community Services that does a lot of cooking demos and so on. We also have Dayton Children's that have a teaching kitchen. So we have several of these organizations that try to tackle that side of the challenge in terms of getting people educated on how do you choose something that's healthy, what recipes, what sort of cooking. We in Dayton, we definitely have that.
The Food Equity Coalition is bringing all the partners to the table, so they hopefully will have a general movement forward where we're all working together, because we have synergy with several of the other committees, especially around transportation. We have problems as a farming community getting the product to the consumer, but people also have problems getting to the grocery store or getting to the farmer's market. That's a transportation issue. There's policy issues like Felix has referred to before. It's a whole picture. It's not just one little item that we can zero in on, and it's going to be baby steps as we move forward, because we've all got to work together.
And then again, for people to get access to any of these different teams or the work that they're doing, is there a centralized website or telephone, or is there a grand coordinator?
There's a grand coordinator.
Okay, that a person can call to. It's kind of going back to the question that the lady asked about the what can the customers do? What are they doing about this? So if people want to reach out, who should they be talking to?
So in terms of the Montgomery County Food Equity Coalition, that would be Haley Carretta. At the Dayton Montgomery County Public Health. She manages the whole coalition, and I know we are getting a website soon. We are still waiting to hear on that, but from what we've been told, we'll be getting a website soon that will have all this information. So each team will have their plan and their goals and the areas that they're working on, that viewers it will be easy for them to look up online in that website. But at the same time, if they have any questions in the meantime, Haley Carretta would be the best person to talk to.
Okay.
And then she'll be able to direct a person in terms of, this, so what the specific question they have relates to this specific action team. And so you should talk to, like, the co-chairs like us.
And she's done that already. I've already know for a fact that she has done that already, putting people in contact with the teams and the appropriate place to go. So that's the contact person. We just need a little bit more time to get everything up and running because the coalition is less than a year old.
Yes.
We're in the infancy stages.
All right, well, that's very good, but people can call Dayton and Montgomery County Health Department and get started on getting some of these questions answered. You mentioned the importance of profitability in the sustainable agriculture. I have sensed that there's some more about that you all would like to say. that is a really key part of this, and it's got to be viable and financially.
That is one of the major components that we really look at. Farmers look at the environmental impact. Nobody wants to do anything to the environment that is going to hurt the environment. We need to be able to make a living, and that's one of the things that our farmers need to have, is that price point that allows them to do that. This has been a really rough year for farmers with the weather and the climate change that happened in early spring, and then we went into a drought. We're below the cost of production. A lot of our farmers are below the cost of production. So they're going into their reserves. How long they can continue to go into the reserves, again, depends on their balance sheet and the capitalization that they have. So for a beginning farmer to start this, there are a lot of things that have to fall into place. And it's hard to go into, when we look at the social responsibility and community, it's hard to go into a community when they say, we really can't afford your product. We understand that, but we also have to make a living, and a lot of times our farmers will go below the cost of production to get a product into the hands of people who need that product. But it's something that we have to be cognizant of as a community, that there are some issues. Just because you have a tomato that has come from California or Brazil, when was it picked? What was the quality of it? What was the pesticide and herbicide program used? What are they doing to the land that they have? These are all issues that need to be weighed by the consumer, and our consumer in the United States votes on that, and our farmers hear that. And it's the relationship that the United States Department of Agriculture, get to know your farmer. That's the interaction that happens at the farmers markets. When you go to a farmer's market, the farmer's there, he's raised the food. Or you go to his roadside stand. You're interacting with that person who is growing your food. You can tell them what you're looking at. You can ask them questions. We're open to showing you what we're doing and how we're handling it. But again, we have the price to pay. We have to pay taxes just like everybody else. We have the inputs, and we have to make a living doing it.
Right.
And I think that's how sustainability has changed as a concept that used to be very environmentally focused in terms of protecting the environment. Now, I would say that's how sustainability has changed in the last 5 to 10 years, in recognizing that yes, environmental protection is critical, but we can try to achieve all three through certain opportunities like local food. I mean, you can try to protect the environment, be environmentally sustainable, at the same time provide nutritious, healthy food to local people, and also make sure that local farmers and farm workers have a living wage. So I think the more that we have learned about sustainability and in understanding that, I think now we are seeing the emergence of solutions that are looking at much more broader pictures in terms of, more a life cycle view of products, in terms of looking at, yes, we have to be environmentally friendly, we have to be environmentally sustainable, but here's an opportunity to be environmentally sustainable while at the same time providing economic opportunities for local farmers, doing economic development in terms of local farmers and farm workers, and at the same time catering to communities that would appreciate and benefit from having healthy and accessible local food. So I think sustainability has transitioned from that environmental concept to a more holistic, balanced view of let's look at all of these different things and let's try to see whether we can come up with integrated solutions that address all of these challenges, not just the environmental piece of it.
Certainly.
And that's where SARE has always been since its inception. We're looking at all three pillars of sustainability. And when we focus on grants or we're looking and reviewing grants, all three components have to be in those grants for them to be funded. So they may not all play an equally important part, but all three of them have to be there. If they're not funded. And that's where we come up with a lot of the resources that we can use for education, looking at climate change. How do we address water quality on the farms? How do we address food insecurity and the local markets that we need to have?
Okay. Is there one particular book that you all would recommend that our viewers read about this subject, or one particular research project that you have out there? I mean, I know that it takes an enormous field and takes it down to just this, but for the beginner who maybe hears this program and thinks, I want to go find out more about this, what's an entry step that a person can make?
I would recommend Michael Pollan's books.
Pollan, P-O-L-L-E-N?
P-O-L-L-E-N.
Okay.
A-N.
A-N, thank you.
Because he has written, there's many writers who have written about local food systems and the importance of sustainability to, or importance of local food to sustainability. But Michael Pollan is one of those authors that I really like to read, and puts these sometimes complicated ideas in a very simply understandable way. So I would recommend In Defense of Food, Food Rules, Second Nature. I mean, these are only three of his extensive list of books that he's written, but I always look at Michael Pollan as an author. If somebody was interested in learning more about food, I would recommend Michael Pollan.
Go ahead.
And I would go to SARE.org. SARE.org.
Good.
And I would look at their books that they have and the pamphlets. All the grant information is there. It'll bring all of everything trying in one area. And am I biased? Yes, because it's science-based research. It's been proven. So Pollan is a good book. He's a good writer. I'll throw out the other one.
Okay, no, that's fair enough. That's good. I mean, each person is going to find what they can learn from and gravitate to that.
I would like to add, if people are interested, also look at the Sustainable Development Goals, United Nations Sustainable Development Goals framework, because there is goals on food, on hunger, on poverty. So the 17 goals represent a holistic framework, and United Nations has put together several publications in terms of exemplifying how these areas tie together. So if you look up in relation to the resources on sustainable development goals, they'll be able to find a lot of resources on each of these areas and how each of these areas tie to sustainability and play a critical role within that sustainability framework.
Good. And if a viewer or group wants to have a speaker on this subject for their church, their civic group, whatever, if they're looking for speakers, who's the person to go to?
I think both Felix and I would be willing to speak. We
Okay.
don't have an issue doing that. We'd like to have some of our farmers come with us, or at least I
course.
would.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And some
Be
of
more
the
fun.
and some of the consumers, because this is a dialogue. It's an ongoing work in progress, and we really need everybody's input into it.
Okay, very good.
And as educators, we always like to get the community involved in these issues. And I mean, from being an educator, from the students' point of view, experiential learning is critical for students learning these issues. And there's no other place for students to even learn to see where these interactions actually happen. So yeah, I mean, both of us, along with farmers, we would be very happy for opportunities.
Thank you. That's good for them to know. We have only but 1 minute left, so I'd like to ask you for any closing remarks that you'd like to make, and then I'll turn to you, okay?
I guess the thing I'm going to say is we really need a lot of help. We need a lot of support coming in and a lot of different ideas, because no one idea is going to solve this problem. It's going to be a combination of ideas, and we really need to get to what we kind of call the sweet spot right here.
Right.
That is sustainability in agriculture and other forms of our social responsibility.
I would echo the same. I mean, our farmers can do this. Our farmers have the capacity. They can do this. At the same time, our consumers need this. I mean, especially within Dayton in terms of the food desert situation we have. But we need a lot of support. And we can't do this without the help and support of the community, especially rallying around these initiatives and learning more and becoming involved in these initiatives. So yeah, I mean, we definitely need a lot of support. And without that, without the community, none of these things would be possible.
Okay. Thank you both for a lot of very good information this evening. I've learned a lot, and I know the viewers have too, so we really appreciate your participation on the show, and good luck with all the work that you're doing.
Well, thank you for
Thanks,
the
Diane. Yeah.
opportunity.
And thanks to the viewers for watching, and for our callers for supplying us with challenging and excellent questions. Thank you very much. Good evening.